A few days ago, I was doom scrolling on X, and I saw a picture that made me do a bit of a double take. It was a picture of Prime Minister Mark Carney and Ghislaine Maxwell. Yeah, that Ghislaine Maxwell, ex-girlfriend and co-conspirator of Jeffrey Epstein. And at first, I was like, what the hell is this? And then I noticed a little something. In the bottom right-hand corner, a Grok logo. Someone had used X's built-in AI feature to cook this image up. And by the time it hit my feed, it was everywhere. Thousands of retweets, thousands of likes, and hundreds of comments. And then I kept seeing more of them. Mark Carney and Tom Hanks on some island. Carney and Epstein in a hot tub with a woman whose arm looked like it was deboned, Harry Potter style.
Very clearly the bones are not broken.
Broken? There's no bones left.
These are all completely fake, but viral anyway. But there are real photos of Mark Carney and Ghislaine Maxwell at an event in 2013 in the UK. No chatting, no coziness. They were just kind of in the same frame. Mark Carney says that they barely know each other and that his sister-in-law went to school with Maxwell, and that's kind of about it. The real photos ran in places like the New York Times and the Toronto Sun, but they never got near as viral as those AI-generated fakes flooding the internet. I've been seeing a lot of AI slop these days, and it's not just of Carney.
Dear First Nations and Canadians, the group Alberta 51 has called for the province to leave Canada and become the 51st American state, claiming the Canadian government will never correct the parliamentary imbalance that allows Central Canada to control the lives and enterprise of Albertans.
Trump is coming to Alberta to discuss the 51st state because the people of Alberta are interested. 97% chance in the next 2 years.
These are just some of the many TikToks that I've been seeing questioning whether Canada's even a real country, whether we should be. And yeah, I know, this all sounds kind of ridiculous and stupid, but Canada's Cyber Intelligence Agency says that this is just the beginning. They're warning hostile actors, countries like Russia, China, and Iran, are going to use generative AI to flood the internet with disinformation, to push narratives that serve their interests. And now, former Canadian intelligence officials say we need to add another country to that list. The US of A. And don't get me wrong, disinformation is not new. But the flood of false, misleading AI-generated content flooding our social media feeds is. But we're also not the first country to be dealing with it. The US just had its first AI election last year.
There have been more warnings about the impact that artificial intelligence and so-called deep fake images and videos could have on crucial elections in both the US and the UK.
Meta released a threat report Thursday detailing some of the trends used by Russia and other US adversaries to spread online misinformation and disinformation on social media.
A New Hampshire political consultant is facing a steep penalty for making what are called illegal robocalls that used a deep fake AI voice message of President Joe Biden.
The Republicans shared manipulated images suggesting that the superstar Taylor Swift had endorsed his presidential campaign.
And now it looks like it's our turn. Okay, but how much could AI really sway an election? You know, I've seen AI slop. You've seen AI slop. We've all seen AI slop. And I don't know. The images of Mark Carney are not some convincing artistic masterpiece. The 51st State videos, that grating AI voice telling us to rise up in the name of the US of A, is that really persuasive? Maybe I'm just underestimating this whole AI could steal an election thing. Or maybe we're in the middle of an internet-fueled moral panic. This episode, I'm talking to Ryan Broderick. He is the guy behind Garbage Day, an award-winning newsletter about the internet. And he's the host of Panic World, a podcast about moral panics, witch hunts, and viral freakouts. He is an internet guy. And he's also lived through America's first AI presidential election. I want to know, could AI sway our upcoming federal election? Let's get into it. Hey, Ryan. Thanks for making the time to chat with us today.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
You write, you talk. I'm sure you probably think about AI, all the time. It seems like that's kind of a part of your life these days. But I'm curious if you've ever been duped by a generative AI photo.
Luckily, I think so far just once. I think you would call it the Balenciaga Pope was the real big one that I fell for. I think I saw it like opening my phone first thing in the morning, which, not to excuse myself for believing it was real, but I think that contributed for sure. And
the morning delusions.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, all right. I mean, and the thing is, like, the Pope wears weird stuff. So I thought, okay, the Pope's wearing like new weird stuff. Fine. If you look closely, yeah, it has like an uncanny valley, like otherworld sheen to it. But on a phone screen, in a feed that you see for 30 seconds, totally look legit. I didn't share it as real, but I definitely saw it on my phone and thought, Pope's got a new coat.
Yeah, you even called it, I think, the first case of AI misinformation that you've seen. I guess I'm curious what your initial reaction to it was. Just like, oh my God, this is super cool, or like, what the fuck is this?
So the order of my emotions, I would say, started with first being like, oh, that's so funny that he has a coat that like a Balenciaga Parker. I was like, that rules. And then I was like, oh, it's not real. Like, that's not as fun. And then I was like, oh no. Is this like how everything is going to feel from now on? And I remember at the time, I think I probably even wrote about it, like being like, this is the future of everything, which I think I was wrong about because, reflecting on it now, I have not seen that level of a believable dupe or a believable AI sort of image ever since. It's never happened again. So it was a really weird moment. And I feel like a lot of tech reporters were like, this is the sign of something very bad to happen, but it didn't so far.
Why do you think it hasn't happened again in the same kind of way?
Well, I think there's a few reasons. One, AI is still not better than the most common form of mis or disinformation you're going to see online, which is someone taking an existing real photo or video of something and saying it's something else. So like, this was really big at the beginning of like the conflict in Ukraine and Russia, where you're just seeing like war footage or even like video game footage from all around the like from everywhere being said like, okay, this is happening there. The other thing is that I think people quickly realized that AI has a better propaganda use. Instead of trying to force it, incrementally to reflect reality, which it still is not very good at, you can use it to reflect like aspirational reality. So this is like very big in the far right, where they're like going to generate like 10,000 images of like beautiful white women and beautiful white men living on farms or something. I mean, like, this is the future they took from you. Like
the future of what Gaza will look like after Trump's plan, right?
So yeah, Trump shared a AI generated video of Mar-a-Lago, Gaza, and it was all Mid-Journey slop like stuck together. And like, that is and that's like a classic internet. Like, that's what I think is really interesting about AI as a form, is that it started as this really unique, genuinely brand new kind of media, and has quickly devolved into just like normal meme slop. But instead of using Photoshop, you're just having a bot like poop it out.
Mark Carney, who is the new Prime Minister of Canada.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. There are images of Mark Carney circulating the internet. I've been seeing them on my Twitter feed. I've been seeing people reacting to them on TikTok. I'm going to open it up for you and actually just show them to you because I think...
Canadian memes. Very exciting.
We have two pictures of Mark Carney looking somewhat cozy with Ghislaine Maxwell. The first time I saw them were during the Liberal leadership race when Carney was clearly the front runner. And I mean, we can make all sorts of assumptions on why they were circulating, but clearly they don't make him look good. But I think this is the complicated part, and bear with me here. There are real images of Mark Carney and Ghislaine Maxwell at an event in the UK in 2013, but they look nothing like the images that I just showed you. They're not cozy. They're not even talking. They just kind of happen to be in the same frame. My question here is, even if AI or generative AI isn't like creating news scandals, new narratives out of thin air, how much power does it have to take existing narratives and scandals and make them feel more believable, to kind of like blur the line between what's real and what's just like close enough to be real?
It's a really good question with unfortunately not a very easy answer. So I don't think anyone can truly say, you know, this is the cultural impact of one AI image. Like, you know, even the fake Pope, like you can't say like, okay, this convinced X amount of people to believe that this is real. Like, there's just no way. I typically view, particularly AI propaganda, like the kind you're showing me, I typically view it as an expression of belief rather than an attempt to convince.
What do you mean by that?
So, like, if you're finding, like, hundreds of thousands of images being generated of Mark Carney and Jeffrey Epstein, I think that is an accurate expression of a lot of people who want you to believe that Mark Carney and Jeffrey Epstein were friends.
Mm-hmm.
They're probably hoping that someone sees that and it sort of convinces them to their cause. But if you're in an environment where you're surrounded by images of Mark Carney and Jeffrey Epstein, for instance, I do think at a certain level it becomes really hard not to start to associate them. And the thing that AI is really good at is bulk. It takes you, you know, even if you're good, like 15 to 20 minutes to make a Photoshop. But an AI can generate in that time a billion images if you have a fast enough computer. So it is about, I think it's about like brute forcing consensus with the hopes that, you know, it becomes unavoidable.
I wonder if something similar happened in the U.S. AI, misinformation or disinformation building off of a narrative that kind of already exists.
Sure. So this was an incident in Springfield, Ohio last year where random images, so once again, misidentified images that were real, were used to kickstart a moral panic about Haitian immigrants in the city kidnapping wild animals from the park and like eating them. Mm-hmm. And real images of people like picking up roadkill helped spawn that. And then once like it started to sort of like trend, you know, people started making AI images about it. So I think like even Trump shared one.
Yeah.
So once again, like that's where I come back to like it's an expression of belief rather than an attempt to convince. In the same way, you know, you would use a meme generator to make a joke about tariffs or something, you know, like it's the same kind of use case.
Yeah, except they aren't really jokes to Canadians, but we'll pretend that they're funny.
Yeah, my bad. That may be a bit sensitive topic, but
what do you look for on the internet that raises your this is an AI image flags?
Most of the AI generation hallmarks for an image are still kind of the same. It has problems generating certain appendages. It has problems generating backgrounds, like especially like people in the background. Most AI photos seem to have a center focus, and then if you like look, you know, going outward in a circle from the center, it starts to render things less and less well. So there's kind of like a natural degradation towards the sides of the image. Still, many AI photo generators prefer blue and orange color palettes because they absorb too many movie posters, is the theory. There's also, I think, just like an uncanniness to them that people have kind of picked up on. There's still probably like an image or two, like in my own sort of like, you know, week to week kind of running around the internet where I'm like, all right, I'm going to save this in my little folder for work tomorrow. And I'm going to figure out, like, is this a real photo? Because, like, also reality is getting weirder. So you're like, okay, like, was Trump hawking a Tesla in front of the White House, or is this like an AI thing? And then you got to do a little bit more work than you used to.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of people who see real stuff and they're like, that's AI. And you're like, no, it's not. So it has scrambled our sense of reality in both directions, which is interesting.
But what about like written content and the bots? Like, how do you get a sense of like, okay, this is not real. There is no humans behind this.
I'm not like recommending everyone like go get a subscription to ChatGPT, but like it is useful to keep up with how these things are evolving because they change. And like if you've read AI text, you can kind of tell. There's also certain words it favors. There was a great Guardian piece about how ChatGPT was favoring Nigerian English vernacular because of the gig. Yeah, so they had hired like a bunch of contractors in Nigeria to like feed data into ChatGPT, and like for a while ChatGPT was accidentally talking like a person who speaks Nigerian vernacular English, which is like very funny. So there's like a lot of hints and tells there.
The M dash apparently is very ChatGPT.
I have a problem.
I have a problem with that. I use that religiously.
Well, this is the problem. ChatGPT absorbed like, tens of millions of news stories, and the M dash is like kind of what every single news website uses, and that's why it's using an M dash. Also, it just looks good.
It does.
It still isn't really capable of like being good at propaganda because it's just sort of like an autocomplete that has like a corpus of information that it spits out. So it's not as effective as you'd think. And this is, I think, the most important kind of takeaway here when it comes to like AI and politics is that no one has really cracked the use case for AI and politics in terms of propaganda in a strange way, other than these sort of like aspirational fascist artworks that they're generating. But like, I don't think that really moves the needle. It might, but I'd be surprised.
It's interesting hearing you say that because Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, on August 3rd of 2023, actually said this, I'll read it to you. I'm nervous about the impact AI is going to have on future elections, at least until everyone gets used to it. Personalized one-to-one persuasion combined with high-quality generated media is going to be a powerful force. So, here you are telling me that there is, AI isn't, going to be effective in politics or isn't effective in politics. And we have Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, being like, this is going to change elections forever. So I guess my question to you, because he posted that in 2023, since then you've had the U.S. elections. Did AI have some sort of material impact on your elections, on the U.S. elections?
I'm going to be very bold here and say it had zero impact on our elections.
Whoa. Okay.
Like, genuinely
Why?
Zero. I mean, I for a living, I stare at the internet all day. I couldn't tell you one AI related thing that moved the needle in any way.
What about the Joe Biden robocall that targeted New Hampshire voters?
So that's the distinction I want to make here. If we're talking about public AI content, that's where I'd say it has zero impact.
Okay.
This, I think, is like the most sort of like important distinction when we're talking about AI is that like it can exist as like a replacement for a YouTube video or like what we would know as like social content, but it can also be much more insidious. And so the robocalls, that is using AI. Yes. Now the AI cannot make a phone call. That's like another service. The AI can generate a voice, but the AI isn't probably going to be writing the script, especially if they want it to be good. So there's a lot of human, like you could essentially do the robocall thing at the same scale by recording someone with a really good Joe Biden impression and kind of like do it, right? With the robocalls, like we'll probably never know like if it really impacted it, but they tried to use it. And I think that is the important thing is because like, when I was starting as a journalist, this sort of stuff was all beginning in the early 2010s. And I think a lot of people disregarded the impact of internet content on society. And even up until like Trump was like clearly going to win, the majority of the American media were like, yeah, but he's so online. Like, that's just weird. Like, nobody cares. But they kept throwing stuff at the wall and they figured out stuff that stuck. And I think with AI, because it's so easy, as you said, like people are going to keep trying to crack it. And that is very dangerous because they will eventually figure out the Balenciaga Pope of electoral politics.
Talk to me a little bit more about why you think that AI had no impact on the election. You know, that's a pretty strong claim to make.
My sort of overall take on the American election from last year is that it actually wasn't a very online election. Kamala Harris tried to run a very online campaign, sort of, Brat Summer and all that stuff. And it didn't really matter. Like, her dominating TikTok for months, didn't really make much of a difference. So that has sort of colored my thinking in the sense of maybe the difference between 10 years ago and now is that our relationship to social networks just isn't as intense. I think when they were new, you would open up Facebook and you didn't realize that you were being brainwashed or pulled into some weird radicalization hole because the internet media literacy wasn't as good. And now I don't know if it's better, but I think people are sort of a little less committed to it. But to talk specifically about AI, what I would say is if you take what we already know about how radicalization works online, let's say you're a 14-year-old boy and you're watching a Shane Gillis video and I'm sure you're a big bro YouTuber fan, and then it recommends you, then it recommends you your other favorite podcast, which would be probably Kill Tony, and then from Kill Tony you get Theo Von, and then Theo Von has Elon Musk on, so you watch that, and then that recommends you Lex Friedman, and then that recommends you Ben Shapiro, and you just go all the way down until you're listening to Giga Chad Crusader 1488 talk to you about why anime is good for the white race or something. That's how that process works.
Yeah.
And I think what's really important about that chain of events is that it's deeply human and it's extremely contextual. It's not like you generated a million words of bullshit AI slop text and then you're I'm a Nazi now. No, it's this very slow process of associating what you like with more and more extreme politics. And I don't think an AI at their current level is capable of the human psychology needed to do that.
Canada's Communications and Security Establishment published a 28-page report, and it assessed threats to Canada's democratic processes. And it said countries like China and Russia and Iran are going to very likely lean on AI to try and interfere with our upcoming elections. And they said that specifically they will be using generative AI. And we also have other intelligence officials saying that the U.S. might orchestrate some sort of disinformation, misinformation campaign on social media in the face of these 51st state threats.
Sorry.
And that they are going... It's okay. I guess, do you think these warnings are overblown, or are you underestimating kind of how much AI is already shaping our lives?
I've seen a couple examples of this that I think are useful to think about, because I agree with you. Some of this stuff sounds very abstract, and that's sort of my pet peeve when people do this. Not you, but when intelligence officials are memes are gonna make your children into domestic terrorists. It's okay, well, what kind of memes and how does this work? So what I have seen is right now you can pay a couple dollars to launch a botnet of, let's say 20,000 accounts. You can verify all of them. And then what you can easily do is take one of those accounts and have it just be full of insane racist nonsense or misinformation about an upcoming election in Canada or something. You could, whatever you want. And then you can program the other bots in that network to endlessly agree and share it, being wow, that's so great. I can't wait. I'm changing my vote. And so that's when AI becomes, I think, very powerful, is that it can create the illusion of consensus. So it's not so much that the racist post is convincing you. It's the unanimous agreement of the racist post.
Yeah, it's when you scroll through the comments and there's a bunch of replies being oh, this is a fantastic idea. And yeah.
Right. So imagine an internet where everything is misinformation and everyone's yeah, this is real. Spend enough time in there, you're going to go crazy and just believe stuff that isn't true.
Yeah. It's really interesting because there was a poll that went around earlier last year that 80% of Canadians are worried about the misuse of AI during an election. And you're seeing all these intelligence officials kind of come out and say that AI is coming for our elections. We should be, on the lookout for this stuff. Do you think that the influence of AI in our politics is a bit of a moral panic?
I have enraged my listeners with my takes on AI.
You can enrage ours. Yeah, don't worry.
Great. So I think there are two paths here that may be equally correct, which is my favorite kind of gray area to probe. I think that the fears of AI, like hijacking an election, are both overblown and extremely good for people like Sam Altman, who use it as a marketing campaign. Yeah, because Sam Altman's big thing is like, AI is dangerous. You need to give me infinite amount of money so I can keep it safe for you. You know?
Yeah.
So that's one track. On the other side of it, I do think that people who are saying like AI is the same as crypto, it's all going to go bust, this is bullshit, no one uses it, are dismissive in the wrong way as well. It's not like going to take over the world tomorrow, but it also isn't going away. It's like this, it's much more complex, and the complexities are interesting. And I think, you know, good for us, good for journalists, good to talk about, I think.
Maybe there's something to what you were saying earlier about like, you also just don't trust anything you see on the internet anymore. And I think in the context of an election, like especially in Canada coming up, like, what does it mean when people like scroll through their feeds, which and through the internet, which is like, I think the most common way people get news is on the internet. What does it mean when you don't trust anything anymore?
So I do think there's a trust problem. And I think part of it is because 10 years ago, you would see like a very viral article, probably, you know, like this was back in the Facebook, you could still share links on Facebook kind of days. And people would read the article and then they'd have, you know, all kinds of discussions about it. They'd make memes. And that's kind of how news functions. Now news functions very differently, where you're going to see pieces of a news story all day across different apps, but never see the whole picture. And I think that's very conspiratorial by design. Like you, let's say you see a picture of like Ghislaine Maxwell and Mark Carney. And then you see a thing about like Jeffrey Epstein binders at the White House. And then you see like another thing. And your brain naturally, I think, starts to fill in a picture of like, okay, these things seem related and everyone's kind of talking about the same thing, but there's not an easy way to go find out what the hell they're talking about. And I think that is like the kind of the heart of the misinformation problem right now, or just the heart of the information problem right now, is that like the center is gone.
I just can't stop thinking about the fact that like you are quite skeptical of this AI propaganda revolution.
I've had people tell me recently that I'm an AI booster for not being skeptical enough. Yeah.
No way.
Yeah. I mean, the tide has turned really sharply on this stuff here, where like an overwhelming amount of people think that like every AI company is going to go out of business like by the end of the year kind of thing, which I don't think is true. My sort of like guiding principle is that like if you can do bad stuff with the technology, like people are going to. They're going to try. And AI fundamentally, like its main thing is like it makes certain tasks not even easy, but like instantaneous and immediate, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, of course you're going to see it. When you're talking about mis and disinformation, like the question though is like, did it work? You know, and like how did it work? Because you're sort of dealing with group psychology in these like really complex ways. So it's not that I'm like totally dismissive of AI having a role in misinformation, but I think like one clever poster, like a person posting online, could do the work of 1 million AI bots, like with one just like really incendiary like internet post, right? Like to just go good old fashioned crazy viral. You're gonna beat 1 million AI bots. I do believe that. I have to believe the human racists are better than the automated racists, you know?
Yeah. So like the original tactics of misinformation and disinformation, you think like outlive maybe and outperform AI misinformation and disinformation attacks.
Yeah, and they fit together. Like there's definitely like it's become a part of the toolkit. Like if you're doing, you know, what they would call meme warfare 10 years ago, you're gonna use AI. You're gonna use video mashups. You're gonna use mislabeled photographs and videos. You're gonna do the whole thing. Conspiracy theories, everything.
I saw a piece that you wrote. It said that you think misinformation is fun. That's a crazy thing to say.
It's fun as hell. You ever just told a lie online? Feels great. just watch a bunch of people agree with a thing that you completely made up. Feels amazing. No, what I was trying to argue is that I think what gets lost in the conversation a lot is that there are obviously bad actors that are sending out misinformation and disinformation for either political or financial purposes. Like they're either, there's that for sure. But I also think there's some people who just enjoy engaging with stuff that they kind of know isn't real and don't care. And like one of the great examples is like pretty much anything people write about like Meghan Markle online. Like they're just sort of engaging in a hate fandom. Or like Taylor Swift has a lot of this, where there's like insane Taylor Swift conspiracy theories that people are talking about all day online. And like, I don't actually think the majority of those people believe that in their hearts. There's a social component, like going on Facebook and seeing a thing that's like raw milk will cure autism. Like maybe a lot of those people believe it, but I bet you there's a lot of other people who are just like working through some weird demons and like posting like boomer memes in the comments. Like there's an entertaining and a participatory aspect that makes this stuff so sticky. And I think when you get to the academic world or the journalistic world and you talk about misinformation, it just feels so abstract. Like these Russian trolls in a basement, like making your uncle, a fascist. It's not always that. It's some people just enjoy having fun online, and their version of fun is being awful.
What about when misinformation means like making sexually explicit content of like politicians in the form of deep fakes? We know women and people of color are often the targets of these campaigns. So like, how does that work into your misinformation is fun framework? The person in the image still like is affected by that?
Yeah, no, to be clear, like let's say a sexist AI image that's like clearly fake of like a female politician is being passed around Facebook.
Yeah.
It is obviously bad. Like it's bullying, it's harassment, it's cruel.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say misinformation is fun, what I'm saying is like, it is equally possible that image was made because that person is like a political agent or they were paid to do it. But it's also possible that a person in a very sick way was having fun doing that. And it's also very possible that when that image goes viral and it gets shared, that it could be a nefarious international botnet that's like doing it for real reasons, or like a bunch of people who are just like ganging up on her and having fun. Like, and it's because, and I would equate it to like spreading a rumor around a high school cafeteria. Like there are people who are doing it because they hate you, and there are people who are doing it because they think it's fun to just like spread rumors. And I think it's very human, unfortunately.
Ryan, thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thank you for having me. This was a great conversation.
That's been this week in Canadian politics. We'll see you next episode. Well, you'll see me. I won't really see you, but this whole we're virtual friends thing, I'm down for it. If you're my friend, you can leave me a like. You could leave me a comment. You could subscribe. You could hit the bell. You could do a whole host of things like support this show. You can support this show by going to Canadaland.com/join. What else am I supposed to tell you? Whatever. Thank you for listening.